Hi, and welcome to Apes and Pants with me, Sean Coffey, and Chris Brennan. Thanks for joining us as we explore the whys and wherefores of human behavior. For more information on this episode and to learn more about what we do, visit us at adultsacademy.org. Chris, what are we doing today?
Sean, we're going to focus on something that seems to be sorely lacking in today's society. Kindness. Stick with us.
It is now time for Apes in Pants.
So it seems a ditching teenage fantasy means ditching all your dreams. All your friends and peers and family solemnly tell you you will have to grow up, be an adult, yeah, be bored and unfulfilled. Oh, but no one's yet explained to me exactly what's so great about saving 50 years away on something that you hate. About meekly shuffling down the path of mediocrity. But if that's your road, then take it, but it's not the road for me.
Apes and
Won't
Pets.
sit down and won't shut up. And most of all, I will not grow up.
Why kindness?
So, ultimately, I think that if what we're looking to do is create a world where good things are happening, that being kind to one another is essential, right? To some extent, this goes back to we could take this in a couple of different ways, right? We could take this in a very, sort of Disney version of, Thumper's mom saying, if you don't have anything nice to say about somebody, don't say anything at all. Which, when it comes to the guy walking down the street, the lady in the store that's wearing the outfit you don't like, yeah, that's absolutely the way you should probably approach life. If what you're talking about instead is, policy, public figures, things like that, well, you give up a little bit of your right to be treated with kid gloves. But I don't think we're really talking about how people deal with the modern political climate. We're not talking about how journalists engage with subjects. That's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with how do you deal with the old lady down the block. We're dealing with how do you interact with the people in your neighborhood? How do you interact with the other parents in your kid's school, how your kid interacts with the other kids in their class? We're dealing with how you and I and the rest of us as individuals and as citizens interact with one another. And I think that everything that we're talking about in these virtues, these values that we're striving for, is about trying to get to a place where people are acknowledging one another's humanity and trying to work together to create a better set of conditions for all of us.
So is it just, I don't know, I'm sitting here and I have a half a dozen things going through my brain, and sometimes I just feel like I have my dad's voice in my head. Just be decent, be decent. You don't have to go way over the top with things, but be decent to one another. There was something, where was I at? It was Jewel. And there was an older lady trying to park her car, and it was right in the middle of the crosswalk. And there was another lady behind her just laying on the horn. And there were 4 of us in this crosswalk, and we're standing there, and we start laughing at what's transpiring. And the lady behind can't see that this, and the stereotypical, all you saw was knuckles and the top of her hair. She could barely see over the steering wheel. And while we were laughing at first, as I was getting to my car after this lady was honking on the horn, she turned around, sped through the parking lot. I was a little disturbed by it because you're in a big hurry to get through the Jewel parking lot. I mean, is there a sale on Crackus ham that you have to hurry up and get to? And it just seemed that the whole situation was just devoid of anything decent. And this has to be 2 weeks ago, maybe even 3 weeks ago. And just one of those things that kind of stuck with me. And I thought, if I had Maddie with me at the time, I would have said something to her about, there's no need to honk the horn. There's no reason to yell. There's no reason to, this lady rolled down her window and yelled something as she drove around the other, and the lady who was parking her car had no idea.
Right.
And, one of the first things that I had written down over here in my notes was the workplace. How are we kind, as it matters in the workplace, in the neighborhood? And so we're nice to people we know. We really aren't kind to people we don't know sometimes. So, I don't know.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, I think that, so it touches on, and this is why we bracket this conversation with empathy and kindness, because I think they're ultimately entwined with one another, right? So we talked a little bit at one point, probably in the empathy episode, about this idea that we do sort of have a neurological hard stop almost on the number of people that we can really care about. And that, based upon studies, it's about 150 people. It's called Dunbars Number. And it's the idea that we only have the cognitive capacity to really pay attention to about 150 people. Beyond that, people start to become statistics. They start to become sort of the people outside of our immediate circle. And
like pass-throughs.
Yeah, they're acquaintances, they're pass-throughs, or whatever you want to refer to them as. And the reality is that it is ingrained in our evolutionary character to be suspicious of outsiders, to be wary of those outside of the tribe. And one of the reasons that groups of people, as you start to hit about that 150 person limit, that's why they start to fracture into subcomponents. The size of the typical military battalion, about 100 people, more or less. Company, size of the typical company, about 100 people, more or less, right? The size of the typical group of church congregates that all go to the same service at a given time of day, probably about 150 people if you're in a community that does more than one worship service. You certainly see services that are larger groups than that, but I would ask, how well do you know the other people in the congregation? Probably don't. You probably know about 150 of them. Look at your Facebook list. How many people do you have on your Facebook friends list right now? And if you have more than 150 people on your Facebook friends list, how many people do you actually engage with? Like for me with Twitter, I intentionally keep my Twitter following list around 125 to 135 people. I curate it all the time. I drop people off if I add somebody new. And it's because I recognize that I'm just not going to be able to keep up with the information that's coming from these various people. And I don't use Twitter I'm not a journalist. I'm not using it as a career mechanism. I'm using it as an information tool for me. So there's no need to have then further subdivisions like lists and things like that. So I think it is normal that we tend to get very easily offended, annoyed, upset with people that we don't really know, right? If I know it's grandma in the car in front of me, if I know it's my grandma in the car in front of me, she can take 4 hours to pull into the parking spot. I'm not going to honk at her.
And why
unless I really know grandma and know that she's going to get a chuckle out of me poking her with a stick.
But that's kind of the bit, I don't know what, it's not the point. That would be the whole purpose behind being kind, is you don't know that person.
Yes.
What if that was. What I mean, that's somebody's
another
grandmother.
person. They're another person.
So how do we
Just be kind. Just be kind. I mean, we could pretty well hit stop right there. We could talk for the next 45 minutes. And we'll talk for more than the next 2 minutes. But at the end of the day, it is that simple. If you want to live in a world that is got more helpfulness and decency, you have to be kind. You have to go out of your way to recognize that we are tribal creatures, that we are fear-based creatures, and you have to do everything that you can to check that natural impulse and act with kindness. That's the only way things get better. Nothing gets better by us screaming at one another in a parking lot. That is apes in pants. People screaming at one another in parking lots is apes in pants. That is people acting like base primates that are responding only out of some sort of fear of a loss of status. When you are responding out of kindness, when you are responding out of empathy, you are responding as somebody who is engaging their higher level thoughts, their higher level thinking, the cognitive brain that you've evolved over the last at least several million years, and behaving in a way that promotes the group.
Let's talk about how.
Okay.
And just out of fun, Google how to be kind. Wiki how. Like as if that has to be the first one that comes up. And it's all nonsense. Learn kindness from others. Be kind to yourself. Cultivate. Okay. How?
Sure.
How?
Yeah. Those aren't practical
No.
examples.
So I asked you right before we came back, I said I could talk about a lot of this in regards to Maddie and how I just watch her be kind.
Yeah.
And I wondered to myself, I'm like, well, I have to be teaching her some of that somehow, directly, indirectly, however. And she just does it.
Mm-hmm.
And you gave me what, 30%? She gets 30% from me. She gets 30% from Marianne. And then the other 30% is her and her thought process. She has to have some sort of wicked thought process going on in that 7-year-old brain to hers, because there are some times where I would think to myself, there's no way I'm being kind in that situation. And she just right now just does it. And I make sure that, I heap some praise on her, and we, depending on the situation, we might talk about why did she do that? Or it might not even be a conversation. It might just me kind of throwing a question out there. Hey, why did you, or, what did you think about X, Y, and Z? And at the end of the day, to borrow from you, just do it. Be kind. But how?
I think
because it seems easy.
I think it can be easy. It's easier with some people than others. But I think that, so I don't want to take anything away from Maddie because she's an amazing kid. I think that children have a natural tendency towards kindness and cooperation that they don't get credit for, because we're not paying attention. If you look at sort of the psychological studies that are done on pro-social behavior in toddlers, young children have a very firm sense of fairness, of equitable treatment of one another. They have a very keen sense of empathy and they most often will respond to another kid being distressed with some sort of empathetic, engaged behavior. That's what the studies show the majority of children will do. So then we have to ask, why does that not continue? I don't think the question is, why does Maddie behave that way? It's what happens when kids don't behave that way? And I think, I could be wrong, but I doubt it. That's where that 60% from their immediate family comes in. That's where, do mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or the other adults that matter in your life that are raising you and modeling behaviors for you, one, are they kind to you? And two, are they kind to others? If people are kind to you, you're going to be kind. If people are unkind to you, you're going to respond like a scared animal. You're going to respond out of fear. You're going to respond out of stress. Think about the way you hear parents talk to their children in the store. I hear parents say things that I wouldn't say to my cat. And I don't know if this is a shock to anybody. My cat doesn't actually speak English. I'm baffled by the way people will engage with their children. And that's where you learn kindness. Yes, whether or not you hold the door open for somebody that's coming behind you makes a difference. That is something that your child sees and goes, "Oh, I should hold the door open for somebody." You can say please, say thank you, use good manners. You can say all of that till you're blue in the face.
But if you don't do it,
But if you're not demonstrating it, they're not going to learn it. And if you're not demonstrating kindness to them, they're going to see through it right away. They're going to see through the BS. They're going to see through the fact that you're paying lip service to something. There's a reason we have the, whether you want to call it a maxim or a cliche of actions speak louder than words, there is a reason that is an expression. We recognize that people can say anything that they want to say. I can tell you that the tax bill that's being voted on this week will be good for the middle class. It's not. And all you have to do is look at the CBO scoring on that. Anyway, but that's the thing. But you have to do more work to look at evidence than you do to listen. And people can say anything they want, but your kids pick up on that. The people around you pick up on that. And it's not hard to act with kindness at all. And I think that the simplest question that you can ask yourself if you are dealing with someone is this: if our roles were reversed, how would I want to be treated? What would I want someone to say to me? So I'll give you an example. This past week, my wife and I were supposed to be having furniture delivered. Day before Thanksgiving, we're supposed to have new couches showing up. Delivery windows sometime between 2:30 and 5:30. 5 o'clock comes around, haven't seen anybody, haven't gotten a phone call. Hey, make a phone call. Hey, where's my furniture? When's it going to be here? Just curious what time you guys are expecting the delivery truck to get here. Oh, that was canceled. What? I will save you all the 2.5 hours of conversation that ensued to get loaner furniture to my house the day before Thanksgiving. But suffice it to say, At several times during that conversation, I'm dealing with an office manager the night before Thanksgiving. I could be ranting and raving and screaming and throwing a fit. I was frustrated, understandably. These people that I had given my money to had made a fairly significant error that either they needed to remedy or I needed to adjust all of my plans for the holiday the next day. What was I in Yemen being bombed? No, but I still had a very legitimate problem of my own to deal with. I recognize the first world nature of this problem.
I wanted to insert that comment in there so bad.
But it was my problem. And I was frustrated. Several times throughout my conversation with staff at the store, my comment was, I understand that you did not create this problem. I understand that you need to find a solution here. Recognize that my frustration is not at you. I am frustrated by this situation. I am frustrated by being put in this place. That's an act of kindness, I think. I think just acknowledging for both yourself and the other person, hey, I recognize that you're a human being, and I am not going to offload all of my frustration on you. Had I gotten the salesperson on the phone, that was the one that put in the cancellation order, I probably would not have been as kind. Because they legitimately created the problem. My commentary could be more pointed. Now, that said, I wasn't then going to go about insulting them. I wouldn't insult their intelligence. I wouldn't, like, there are people that would then go, oh, and your mother wears combat boots. Man, old diss there. But, harken back to the Yakov Smirnoff joke, only on maneuvers. But it's perfectly acceptable to address a problem. It's perfectly acceptable to address a problem directly and intently. You do not have to accept substandard behavior from somebody or behavior that is outside of the scope of a contract or just common human decency. I mean, like, obviously the big conversation right now, the tail end of 2017, is sexual harassment. If you are the victim of sexual harassment, you don't need to be kind to your abuser. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about unthinking kindness in scare quotes. We're talking about dealing with people who are people and treating them as such. If somebody is attacking you, you have every right to defend yourself. If somebody is causing you harm, you have every right to stop that aggressively, even. You don't need to honk at the lady that's struggling to get into the parking spot, though. And I think we can all, if we set aside our silly notions of self-righteousness for a minute, I think we can all recognize that those are two very separate conditions.
Put them all together. Empathy, agency, mutual aid, self-reliance, resilience, and kindness.
So we've been talking now for weeks about these 6 values and how they fit into sort of this overarching ethos that we're trying to promote here. And this idea that these 6 values are guideposts, are waypoints that we can refer back to in understanding how to look at the world, how to look at how we engage with the world in a way that goes about making things better. So we talked earlier even about the idea that, we bracket everything with empathy and kindness, because Empathy and kindness are two values that are about getting outside of ourselves. They are about getting outside of the primal fear-based responses that govern so much of what we do, and ask us to consciously be aware of how we interact with other people. Empathy is about trying to view the world through the eyes of other people and understand where they're coming from. Kindness is about how we actually go about interacting with them. And then these other values, agency, mutual aid, self-reliance, and resilience, become this supporting structure for understanding how to go about achieving engaging with the world in an empathetic and kind way, right? Agency is important. I need to recognize that my agency is important, because at the end of the day, while I need to be empathetic and I need to be kind, I also need to be taking care of myself. I don't need to be taking care of myself at the expense of others. Except for very rare circumstances, I think, where physical violence is involved, our agency does not have to be a zero-sum game. There's a lot of people who treat it as such. You know, at the end of the day, there is a lot of people who engage with the world as though their agency is a zero-sum game. I don't agree with that. I don't think that that's how you have to engage with the world. I'd like to see more people engaging with the world with mutual aid as how they support their agency and the agency of others. Mutual aid is going about giving things, giving support to one another, lifting one another up. And that can be everything from donating to an organization like Feeding America to simply offering to help somebody that needs help, somebody right here in front of you that needs a hand, and asking for it in return. Self-reliance is important because there are going to be times when we are up against a situation where we don't have mutual aid, where in order to achieve our agenic aims or to be this positive force in the world, where we have to be prepared to go it alone for a period of time. We need to recognize and have the strength to say, I can do this. I want help. I want to be part of a supportive community. But if I'm not already part of a supportive community, or worse, if I'm part of a destructive community, I may need to have the strength to say, I can step outside of this entirely. I can walk away from this toxic place until I find a supportive community. Self-reliance is important. And resilience is important because every day is going to be something that buffets all the rest of this. I am going to be in the car trying to go to the grocery store when I'm running out of time, I got someplace else to be, there's other people's expectations and needs that are pressing on me, and somebody is going to be driving 3 miles an hour down the lane. Or somebody is going to be fighting to get out of the parking spot. Or somebody is going to be blocking the lane for 4 or 5 minutes waiting for somebody else to pull out so they can get the closed parking. Life is going to cause situations. People are going to cause situations that my immediate reaction is going to be, oh my God, why is this happening to me? Resilience is finding the strength to go, it'll be okay. It's not a big deal. Nobody's shooting at me, the building's not on fire. Right? For years, those were my default questions. When I would start to get upset about something, I would say, in my brain, sometimes aloud, nobody's shooting at me, the building's not on fire. To recalibrate the fact that whatever was bothering me was not an acute threat. It might be frustrating, it might be annoying, whatever, but it's annoying. It's not a threat. And I think that when we can start to interact with the world from a place where we are not perpetually seeing everything as a threat, I think we're happier. I think we are more empathetic. I think we're kinder. I think we're able to exert our agency. I think we are more likely to respond to one another out of mutual aid. I think we see ourselves as more self-reliant. And I think we are generally more resistant. When we calibrate our fears, when we recognize that the world may be a challenging place, but it is not anymore a place that is out to get us day in, day out, I think we're in a better place.
I got nothing. We had a conversation Saturday, and it was my sister-in-law Amy and Sarah. We were at Amy's house. We had coffee Thanksgiving on Saturday, and I was using your example. The conversation was all over the map, but I was using the you and I were talking about, I need you to be supportive. I don't need you to be this, because I sometimes have a hard time, like, I need to vent or I need to whatever. So kind of saying, and Amy and Sarah had been talking about something, and I said, just so there's nothing wrong with looking at her and saying, hey, I need this from you. And then be done with it. You can say, I need this. Mm-hmm. You've known each other for 20 years. I'm trying to think, Matt and Amy have been together 24 years since they were 16 years old. So Sarah, Amy, the only person that knows Sarah longer is Mom, Dad, myself, and Matt. I mean, Amy's been around that long. And I looked at Sarah and I said, just say to her what you need. And then, Amy, you just shut up and listen. And if Sarah says, I need this, and it involves advice or guidance, then give the advice or guidance. But otherwise, if she doesn't ask for it, don't give it to her. There's nothing wrong with, like, setting those intentions. I just found it funny that while you were talking about that, like, they were each getting a little piece of these things. And you could see a little bit of, there had been some tension there between them. And I think, because I think sometimes I've wondered exactly how, a lot of times for me with this is how.
Yeah. And
then sometimes it's just coming down to doing it and then thinking back, oh yeah, that worked out nice. And I've been holding on to those situations. And I think I've gotten better at recognizing those. So this conversation Saturday was happening, and I think I was probably still 5 or 6 drinks in the bag. But I could see it breaking down for the two of them, and they were getting somewhere with it. And I thought, I got to hold on to this. This is a great example. This is the whole point. This is what we're talking about. This is like all those things coming into play and how they're going to fix themselves. And maybe it was good timing. Who knows what it is? But in the back of my mind, if I don't say anything to them, if I'm not sharing with them, this, I guess this would be the mutual aid, right? Where I'm giving them some help. If I don't say that and they don't break down those whatever walls they had up, well, then it's 25 years. It's more than half of Amy's life. It's more than half of Sarah's life together that they've been friends and more than friends. If they don't do that, if I don't say anything, they get nowhere. And I just thought it was a great example of trying to put into play those situations. I guess if I were to sit down a little bit longer and think about it more, there's probably some more stuff going on there, but just now listening to you think about how you tie all these together, I'm like, well, that was a great spot to, they were both so concerned about themselves in that situation and only themselves. They didn't think to go, oh, wait a minute. It's okay. I can say this. So.
Yeah. And when we are all apes in pants. we are all going to default at times, depending upon the level of stress in our lives or the level of stress in the given situation, to this place of reacting out of fear, out of frustration. The more we can be aware of the fact that that is what is going to happen, the easier it is to do all this. And it's often easier to be the outsider that comes in and says, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's okay. Because you're not wrapped up in the cycle of fear. There's nothing for you to be afraid of in that moment. You can be the voice of reason.
Me?
I use the term loosely.
Yes, thank you. I would say probably about an hour and a half before that. Again, we were at my brother's house, and the kids were playing. Maddie brought up her iPod. It's got a crack in it. And I didn't take a hard left, but boy, I was getting ready to go there. And I was angry. I was frustrated. And I was looking for an answer from a 7-year-old that it took me a little bit later to figure out I wasn't going to get.
Sure.
And I remember just thinking, and I thought, God, I can feel myself getting mad about this. This is just not this. I know there was just something else stewing. And I stopped just long enough, and I looked at Marianne, and I said, this is not a big deal, right? And she goes, no, it's not. She said, she'll talk to you later about it. We'll figure it out. It's fine. And I hit just enough moment where I thought, okay, I'm done with it then. Sometimes they don't come, sometimes those, I was inside the moment there. I wasn't the outsider like I was going to be an hour and a half later. But I was on the inside of that one. And I just, for whatever reason, maybe it's a little bit of practice. Maybe it's a little bit of this. Maybe it's 43 years old and I'm finally figuring things out. But I'm glad that I just stopped for that long to ask that question. Is this a big deal? No, it's not. Okay, I'm done. I can move on. I can get... Okay, cool. Because, I'm sure I was making everybody else in the room uncomfortable. Here I am grilling Maddie about this, and it didn't have any place. And I thought, all right, if I just ask a question, I don't have to be embarrassed. It's fine. I don't know what was going on in my brain at the time, but clearly none of it mattered. It's fine. And about a half hour later, and down in Matt and Amy's basement, Maddie finds a old carrying case that Amy had for a phone, and it fit her little iPod, and we put it in, and it's done.
Right.
I don't know, little things like that come up, that slowly recognizing, taking a second look, sometimes taking a third look, figuring it all out.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to step back in that moment of stress is important.
Never been able to do that before.
All right.
Yeah.
So be empathetic. Use your agency. Engage in acts of mutual aid. Be self-reliant. Cultivate resilience. And be kind. That's all any of us are looking for.
Oh, well, I was waiting for a break. We'll go right to it. We want to extend a big thanks to singer, songwriter, and all-around awesome dude Frank Turner for the use of his song Photosynthesis as our theme song. Please visit frank-turner.com to check out Frank and his work, and follow the links in the show notes to buy his songs on iTunes or Amazon. And remember, if you purchase through Amazon, you also support this show.
Please subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our email list to get notifications of our new content, and share what we're doing with your friends. You can visit us at adultacademy.org to find all of our content, buy a shirt from our Teespring store, and support us by using our Amazon link. There's no more valuable resource any of us have than our time. Thanks for spending your time with us today. Cheers.